Listen, I've been rehearsing all commercial break. It's not getting any better. Oh, Canada, oh, baby. How about this? You got to say, oh, Canada, oh, baby, because it's the highest ranking ever for the Canadian men, sitting in 30th here, so an all-time high. We know a lot of that coming off the Concacaf Four Nations. Even though they played in that third-place match, they defeated the United States 2-1. But heading into it, we did have a lot more expectations. Again, a lot of the talk, of course, is the program getting its first trophy since 2000. Even though they faced the United States in third, that is an arch rival, getting the victory. A lot of feel-good feelings there for the fans. But I do have to ask the question, given that they didn't play for a trophy, and even though they've moved up into 30th, you kind of have some conflicting emotions. Was it the right step, KJ, or did they take go the wrong direction after Concacaf Four Nations?
I probably just disagree because I've heard Gareth talk a little bit about this already, so I think I know where he might go. I think it's the right step. I understand why there's a lot of disappointment in the country because they weren't able to come away with a trophy. But there were so many things that I saw during that time there that I thought they're going to learn from that and they're going to benefit from it. And I think in moments where in the second minute against Mexico and the crowd's going crazy and they've just scored in the first minute, and I can think, okay, that's a team that can either break right now or bend or whatever you think. And at that point, they didn't break. They buckled a little bit. And there was a moment during that game, and I said to the person next to me, like, if they concede again here, they're done. And they held firm. And not only did they hold firm, they got the momentum back, went down the other end and had a claim for a penalty and built their way back into the game so much so that in the second half, Mexico never played. They just never played. People remember that first attack that went over the line that led to the Jimenez free kick was the first real time they had an attack for 15 minutes. So I liked that. I liked how they responded in that game. I liked how they played against the United States. I thought they were excellent. And they came back when Davies went off. I thought they actually got better in a sense of having a bit more ambition about the team. And I liked the fact that they faced adversity and came through it and found a way to win the games as well. So for me, there's a lot of positives on the field. We're going to get into some of the question marks about it, but no, I like the way they stuck together, found goals when they needed to do it, and I think the next step now is going to be very different. We're going to get into that later, but there's a lot of time between now and the Gold Cup. But it's about how do you build from this, and now when they face teams in the Gold Cup and subsequently the World Cup, who are going to play probably with a lower block, how do you break them down? They're bigger question marks. But no, I think a lot of positives from LA.
How dare you pigeonhole me, KJ?
No,
it was a great turn.
I just remember what you had to say, my friend, last time. And
you're going step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And then, well, by the way, I'm kind of meshing the Hockey Four Nations and Concacaf Nations League all in one because
there's four teams.
It was just USA, Canada.
You're not the only one.
No.
I'm like, that Concacaf Four Nations Champions League thing, that tournament, that one right there. Yeah. So step in the right direction. You agreeing or not agreeing?
Well, they're better off than the United States. I can say that much.
Okay.
I obviously, KJ was there. He's picking up on things that I'm not at home. The biggest reason why it's a step in the wrong direction is what happened with Alphonso Davies. Not just the injury, but the off-field impact and questions that have now come back on Canada soccer, whether it's their fault or not. The questions are still being asked. That's a big one. On the field, though, I just didn't think they played very well. You said that Mexico weren't playing. I think that was by design, because I think the book on how to play Canada is you want them to have the ball. Canada are a very difficult team to play against. I think they have some extraordinary players, some physical players, some players that wear their heart on their sleeve and are willing to take it as far as they need to. And I think that that's a testament to these players, the manager, and the group. But I think for this team to evolve, they need to be more than that. I think that squads or team selection left much to be desired. I think that set pieces continue to be something that they're just not very good at and show very little improvement game to game. I think the style of play, this for me was my perception of Jesse Marsch before he came in. Great guy, smart guy, likable guy, wonderful spokesperson for Canada soccer right now. Like, he ticks all the boxes. Canadians love him. I'm just looking in terms of style of play. This is Red Bull style of football. They're going a million miles an hour. They're playing direct. They're trying to get the team to turn over the ball, make mistakes, and they punish them. This is the vast majority of where their goals have come from. Problem is, I think this Canada team has some technical players that can be used more and better. Jonathan David in the game against Mexico was playing so deep. I want him far closer to goal. I just thought that the tactical changes, little ones that he did make, didn't come off. There needs to be another way. There needs to be a plan B, a plan C, a more technical way of playing. Just using Canada's superior athletes, and they are superior athletes, KJ, I think it's selling this group short. This is enough to compete at the World Cup, but I don't think it's enough to take them to where they need to be. I need to see the team evolve, and I'm not seeing it right now, to be honest.
I think you have to preface by the fact that it came at an international window where a lot of the significant players were not ready to operate at a level that Jesse Marsch needed them to be. And that's international football, by the way. That's what happens as an international manager. You sit back and you let players go and you don't know how they're going to return, whether it be form, fitness, what's going on in their private lives, are they playing very often? All of those things you receive back, and this was the longest time you'd been away from them, right? Over 4 months, right? So when you talk about squad selection, Jacob Schaffelberg wasn't fit enough to play every game from the start. Tajon Buchanan was not fit enough to play both games from the start. Matthew Chouanier had barely played, so that's why you could only play him in the second game. We could go on and on and on. Kyle Laren's not playing very much in many minutes. There's lots of areas where you could have said...
This might be the case next summer.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, your questions to the players and all the content you did was you're 2 games away from winning a trophy. This was how this tournament was built, KJ. This was the best chance for Canada to win a trophy since the year 2000. They didn't. They ended up beating an exceptionally poor U.S. team in a third-place game, which for me, watching again from home, looked like a third-place game.
Right.
And you've seen lots over the course of your career,
sure.
right? That's what it felt like.
But the questions to the players has to be that. Like, our job is to sell that.
It wasn't your question
No,
that was wrong, but that was a mentality. Everyone thought that this was the time for Canada to go on and win a trophy.
The issue is that as people who sell the game, you have to sell it that way, that it's 2 games for a trophy. But it's not like a tournament. It's not a tournament like in the World Cup. So it won't be like this next year because they're going to be getting those players at the beginning of a June window where they play a game in Montreal. And in the World Cup, you have 20 to 30 days together to build through a tournament. He picked these players up on a Monday afternoon in Los Angeles, and they played a game Thursday night. It's very, very different to a World Cup tournament style. It's dubbed as a tournament and 2 games away from a final or from a trophy. But in realistic purposes, it's just not the case. The players are not ready physically to be able to go out there and do that way. So people can call them excuses.
Other teams as well.
Of course they are. But again, there's cases for the other teams. So we saw it with the United States, and we saw it a little bit with Panama. But these are the realities. People call them excuses, the realities of what Canada has to face. And ultimately, right now, expectations are really high. And I understand why, because of Copa America, 30th ranked in the world. But our talent pool is still very, very small of the amount of players that we want to be able to expose on the international stage who he can rely on. Very, very small compared to those other countries. So we want to talk about the U.S., about what they did. We want to talk about what Mexico. You want to talk about how many players they can play for that national team compared to how many Canada got. It's drastically and dramatically different. So when you put it down to that point, 3rd place is probably where they probably deserve to be.
So, okay, so if we're going to make the argument, I think a lot of people agree that there's a ton of positivity around this team. We have to talk about the elephant in the room, of course, which is the Alphonso Davies situation, which is him going down with the injury, which is his agent coming out, calling out Jesse Marsch and Canada Soccer, which is Bayern Munich now coming out as well, saying they didn't like the way Canada Soccer handled it, even threatening perhaps any kind of legal action, no movement on that. So how much is that a distraction as well to any kind of positivity or momentum that this program could have built?
I care less about what's being said in the off-field nonsense. To me, like, this should have all been handled privately. All of this. Like, this is the last thing anyone needs. And when I say anyone, specifically, I mean Alphonso Davies. He does not need to be dealing with this right now when he's trying to recover from a very serious injury at an absolutely inopportune time. I mean, I've been watching KJ, a lot of him played for Bayern Munich this year. I think he's been great. I think he just continues to improve. And for this to happen right now, the runway of games that Canada has between the World Cup is so limited. Now your captain, an important player, because I don't think it's necessarily settled where he should be playing for this team. I mean, that's been limited. Now you're looking at a left-back position beyond your star player, your best player being out, a left-back position where you have 2 other players who are kind of the players that would play there if Alphonso wouldn't, in Atakubi and Lorea, who have both been dealing with their own injury problems. Yeah. And all of a sudden you have a position that looked to be strength on paper And now it's like, okay, where do you go from there? I think this complicates things incredibly for Jesse Marsch. And then even in terms of the captaincy, like, you want him to be the face. You want him to be the captain. Like, and his agent's coming out and creating a spat between his camp and the manager. Like, it's just all a messy situation. But first and foremost, I just feel for Alfonso, and I just hope that he has a quick and steady recovery.
Yeah, obviously our thoughts and prayers remain with Alfonso. I think he'll be okay coming through this. Look, things happen for a reason, okay? I can report, and I already know this, you know, the agent who came out was very emotional, you know, what he had to say. And look, that is your client. And it's not just your client, that is a family friend that you've mentored and taken care of for the best part of 2 decades, who you've just watched then playing in a game, in his mind, a third, fourth playoff game, in the agent's mind. It wasn't that in the mind of Canada Soccer. I understand the difference. And you just saw your star player and the man that you love suffer a significant injury that rules you out for up to 9 to 12 months in a year where you could go on and win the UEFA Champions League. Look, I'm not defending what he has to say, and of course he probably should have said some of those things privately, but that's just an over-emotional state of someone who says that. Then Bayern Munich say what they want to say. That is a little bit from an emotional point of view as well. From what I'm hearing, this is not going to court. It's just an emotional thing to say again. Where
Judge Judy, you can stay where you are.
It just became a thing to say at that moment. I'm with Gareth. Look, ultimately what matters is what those players think of Alfonso Davies in this regard. And they need to sort this out. And now, after this, what happens is things get stronger. We now know that Jesse Marsch is going to communicate more with Alfonso Davies in his camp. We now know that they have ability to communicate more. Everything is happening for a reason, to gear towards the World Cup, which is the legacy of what Jesse Marsch's tenure will be, by the way. Not a Nations League game in LA. His legacy is on the World Cup. Will the Canada get out of the group, and can they win a knockout game to get to the last 16? That is his legacy. And so when they get to that World Cup, which is all it's about, they'll figure this out and they'll understand it. But what those players think right now of Alfonso Davies, with his agent coming out, is for them to figure out and build on that, and they will be better and stronger through all of this. The rest of it, the news coming out, I understand why fans get annoyed about it, because it's the only piece of, as jurors, of evidence that they can receive to go, this looks like more cracks that are going on behind the scenes. But as usual, things are often not as bad as they seem.
Of course, but that's very quickly, that's why seems like everything in Canada soccer over a lifetime in the sport, everything is emotional. All these emotional reactions. The stakeholders of the game in this country need to understand that not the decisions and outbursts don't need to be made on an emotional basis. They need to be what's in everyone's best interest.
We're trying to professionalize the sport. This is growing point. It's just a growing pain, right?
I get it, but we're hosting a World Cup. We're in 2025. We have a player who's one of the best players at his position in world football, who's about to make $16 million. You know what I mean?
But come on, Gareth. We're hosting a World Cup, but we can all agree with the facilities that we have and the abilities of what we've got.
I know.
We're very blessed to be doing that, considering that
100%. But a lot of the decisions that are being made are from an emotional perspective. I'm saying, like, everyone just needs to take a deep breath when it comes to this stuff, because it's made an unfortunate situation, and that's what it is, an unfortunate situation, one that was way messier. Fingers crossed. Time heals.
I think Jesse Marsch believes the same thing.
And Jesse's a guy that can galvanize and rally.
He's not going to be. So, he's not emotional about
What do you think is top of mind for Jesse Marsch then, as we head into a World Cup? Like, what's something that he really needs to prioritize?
Set pieces. 100% set pieces, because they've scored 2 goals from set pieces in 15 games. 1 came from a second phase and 1 came from a third phase. And modern day football now, we're seeing more and more in the Premier League, goals between, 1 every 25. We're seeing more in-swingers in the English Premier League than ever before, like over 70% of corners coming in. Set pieces in tournament football, in World Cups, there's a higher percentage of headers and a higher percentage of set piece goals than any other professional level of any of the top 5 European leagues. It's not even close. And in the World Cup, Canada's going to get a set piece, and they're going to need to score a goal from a set piece from those moments. And this is a crucial element. Who takes them? How do you defend them better? And how do you score goals from them? So that's top of mind right now for me, is how to improve those set piece delivery.
That's why I said that first. Again, quickly, goalkeeper. That's a huge decision that needs to flush itself out. And then with a team like Mexico, they were never going to give away the ball in the back. They played quickly. They played deep when they had to. Other teams are going to play Canada like that. What Canada doesn't have, what Jesse Marsch doesn't have, is a number 10. He doesn't have that attacking midfield creative player that can just unlock a team and just do it through himself, just how good that player is. Yeah. How is Canada going to deal with teams that don't allow them to press and turn them over? How are they going to go and systematically break down some stubborn competition? Because they will face teams like at the World Cup, especially hosting.
Set pieces are even more important against teams who sit with a defensive block.
All right, well, emotions flying high here as we
Canada,
talk
oh,
about
baby.
Canada soccer. Yeah, oh Canada, oh baby.